Here are the 10 coolest features and changes that we see in the finals season 4, which in my opinion, and in the opinions of many others, is the best season so far. Also, a huge thank you to Embark for sponsoring this video. Super glad to see that the marketing is taking a step in the right direction. If you guys haven't checked the new season out just yet, then you can do so using the link in the pinned comment or in the description. But anyways, let's dive into it. First and foremost, Embark not only solved a huge issue that a lot of players previously had with the finals, but they also made a lot of weapons that previously kind of sucked a lot more viable in this new season by adding the option to add sights or scopes to most weapons that really needed it, such as the LH1, the V9S, the revolver, AKM, FAMAS, and even the M60. You can also remove the scopes and sights on several weapons such as the XP54, the FCAR, or the newly added Pike. While I don't see much of a need in removing the sights from any weapons, the additional customizability is really nice and it just allows for more variety if you want to challenge yourself or just try out new things. You can also buy the sight adjustments for 800 or 400 VR to attach a sight or remove one respectively, and since I've already laid out this groundwork, I wouldn't be surprised if there will be even more sight additions to weapons in the future. But on its own, this is already a great start and a step in the right direction, and I am curious to see what it leads to. I also want to add that while the new weapons might not be for me, I'm super happy to see that the new weapons this season are actually good. You know, season 2 and season 3 infamously released weapons that were not that useful.
They're like this freaking casual.
And out the gate, these new weapons are just absolutely insane. In Season 4, we're also not only seeing the return of the long-missed cash-out mode for Ranked, but we're also seeing several improvements to how the game mode works in favor of a more competitive experience, which makes Ranked worth a lot more than in previous seasons. In the Season 4 cash-out, you can no longer see the live score of anyone except players on your team. You can also not see whether any enemies are dead or alive. This, in addition to reworking spawns, makes third-partying a lot harder and less of a viable strat, which leads to less cheesy strats and more, dare I say, proper team fights. Speaking of which, in the new mode, kills are also worth more, and in addition to that, finishing a cash out only gives you 70% of the full cash amount, which leads to a lot more value for starting cash outs and defending them rather than hiding and waiting for the last minute before you do anything else. All things considered, we should be seeing more competitive games with a lot less annoying cheese strats this season. Obviously, a more casual variant of cash out tournaments is still available through World Tour, so you can play whichever you feel like. I've personally been playing a lot of quick cash so far, and I've been having a blast getting into really just as many fights as possible. In Season 4, we now finally have access to a static crosshair as well, and if you haven't played for the later parts of the previous season or have experienced it yet, it also comes with extensive crosshair customization as well. The static crosshair, or well, the in-world crosshair toggle, when turned off, will stop your crosshair from bouncing all over the place when you take damage or you run and jump around. It turns into a true static crosshair and stays in the middle of your screen at all times. And even though it's just a small thing, it helps tremendously with not losing your crosshair in the middle of hectic fights, and it also makes flicking between targets when hip firing a lot more consistent. As soon as I heard about this change, I immediately hopped in game to change it, and it makes a huge difference, especially when using hip fire weapons such as shotguns.
Never gonna find me here. Pew pew.
I also really like that the new season features new extensive tutorials for new players. I often say that one of the key things that often is overlooked when it comes to games nowadays, especially high skill level games or live service games, is the lack of proper new player onboarding or just a poor new player experience in general. In some cases, when done too poorly, it can destroy any chances a new game ever would have had to get a decently sized player base to begin with. The first iterations of the tutorials in the finals were really lacking in that regard, and the new tutorial does a better job in getting the new players settled so they actually have a chance once they jump into the game and have a good time. The new season also comes with a lot of balance changes, and I obviously don't want to go through every single patch note. I mean, we did cover that in a previous video, so you can always check that out afterwards if you are interested, but one of my favorites will be the RPG nerf. The RPG now deals 100 damage from, I believe it was 140, and takes about twice as long to reload. It's still pretty decent, but no longer a near instant kill against lights or a massive fight changer on its own, especially if you would have combined 2 RPG shots on the same target, which normally would just flat out kill lights and mediums and leave any heavies with a sliver of health left. You now see way less heavies running around with their RPG out as a primary, and it's way less of a fight winner in their favor, which makes each fight play a lot more differently, and it honestly just feels a lot more fair. Another great change is that the mesh shield, in addition to only being 500 health since sometime in Season 3, also now goes on cooldown no matter whether it is destroyed or not. Heavies can't really spam the shield or weave between the shield and abilities or the primaries the same way in Season 4 as they could have previously. If the mesh shield is destroyed or if it takes any damage when it's active, then it goes on a 12-second cooldown. Otherwise, if you took no damage when your shield was up, then it goes on an 8-second cooldown instead. I also want to mention, as a dagger enjoyer myself, that the dagger buff makes a huge difference in how the weapon actually plays out.
And the crowd goes wild.
As of Season 4, you can now hold the dagger secondary fire, so the backstab, ready to go for as long as you would like. You won't actually have to stab until you release secondary fire. You can slide or dash while holding the dagger, which lets you line up your shot or go for backstabs. It also makes hitting trick shot backstabs a lot easier. It's worth mentioning that it took some time getting used to needing to hold the right click rather than having it just kind of charge up and stab whenever. And for me, actually timing the charge up correctly after having gotten used to the old dagger was honestly pretty difficult, but overall it's definitely a massive improvement for everyone, especially the ones that couldn't do anything with the dagger due to this forced timing it had in the first place. It's closer to the beta version of the dagger, which I'm all for. And the last balance change I want to gush about is the dematerializer buff. In addition to its balance changes, I think that the dematerializer feels different this season because of supposed engine changes, but more on those in a bit. As for the actual buff, the dematerializer is now a lot more forgiving and covers a lot more area than it did since it was released. Using a dematerializer removes so much of any existing props, walls, and ceilings that it's usually difficult to patch them up after you've passed through. And while it takes some time getting used to it, I've been getting caught in way less map geometry when trying to escape my enemies, which makes it so much more reliable and actually a good tool to escape the enemies with than before. Other than the fact that seeing as it has been buffed, all the other mediums are also running a dematerializer, so they'll just chase me anyways. That's besides the point. Another huge change that I immediately noticed is that the game in general, it feels different. I couldn't put my finger on exactly what it was, especially since this isn't actually listed in the patch notes, but my chatters told me that there was supposed to be an engine update, which sort of tracks with what stood out the most to me. One of the largest changes that I noticed is that destruction feels completely different. It's still the same, the final style, all-encompassing destruction that we've all come to know and love, but I want to say that it feels a lot more realistic. Whenever any section is broken off from a building, it instantly comes crashing down with real weight. It doesn't slowly float down until it peacefully lands on the floor, PG-8 style. Buildings feel like they crumble and they fall apart a lot faster than ever, and it makes for some pretty spectacular moments, while also making any abilities with destructive features feel a lot more impactful. The destruction really makes a lot of fights feel different from game to game, or even just fight to fight, sometimes for the better and sometimes for the worse, since things fall apart really fast now, and sometimes you're just gonna get trapped in the rubble. And of course, as for the 10th change, which I love about Season 4, is the UI changes. All of the UI, not just the main menu, has seen quite a bit of updates since sometime in Season 3, which makes it look so much more modern. The actual objective UI seems to have been reverted to how I've been told it looks in the beta, which I didn't play myself, but I would say that this whole season returns to the original, the finals feel of the betas of Season 1, when the game was brand new and when it was the most popular. I feel like all the new seasons up to this point have been in a step in the wrong direction, and I think that Embark going back to the roots has been a really good one so far. Obviously, if you compare this season with Season 1, it doesn't have the nukes, it has way more content, so you could argue that it's even better than what it was all the way back then. But either way, I'm excited to keep playing, at the very least, as long as I'm able to each Friday for Finals Fridays. And we're also going to be playing some fun challenges in a future stream with Fixie and Danik D, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and of course to Embark for sponsoring this video. I'll see you all guys next time. Thanks for watching. Peace out.